Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. This is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy, Laura Ingraham wrote.
The Capitol was under siege by people who can only be described as antithetical to the MAGA movement. Now, there were likely not all Trump supporters, and there are some reports that Antifa sympathizers may have been sprinkled throughout the crowd.
Please get him on TV. Destroying everything you have accomplished, Brian Kilmeade texted.
About how I feel about the whole thing, I just thought the tone, the attitude of defiance played out in the Capitol. The lack of security stunned me. I do not know Trump supporters that have ever demonstrated violence that I know of in a big situation.
Quote, can he make a statement? Ask people to leave the Capitol, Sean Hannity urged.
They knew there were hundreds of thousands of people that came to town. We also knew that there's always bad actors that will infiltrate large crowds. I don't care if they're radical left, radical right. I don't know who they are. They're not people I would support.
One of the president's sons texted Mr. Meadows, quote, he's got to condemn this shit ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough, Donald Trump Jr. texted. Donald Trump Jr. texted again and again, urging action by the president. Quote, we need an Oval Office address. He has to lead now. It has gone too far and gotten out of hand. End quote.
If you were to take his speech and compare it to literally any stump speech, you would see absolutely no deviation. But again, because the Democrats have the media in their pocket, carrying whatever message, they can go on with impeachment part deux.
Representatives will likely vote to refer Donald Trump's former chief of staff, who also happens to be a former colleague as a Republican member of Congress, for charges of criminal contempt. Now, if they vote to move forward with contempt, and if the Justice Department follows through with charges, Mark Meadows would become the first former chief of staff to face prosecution since H.R. Haldeman of the Nixon administration. Now, the problem for Meadows in this contempt proceeding is that he snitched on his team before he clammed up. He has turned over roughly 9,000 pages of documents that he himself claimed were not privileged. But he's now refusing to answer questions about those very documents in defiance of a congressional subpoena. Here's how Chairman Benny Thompson put it just before the vote.
When you produce records, you are expected to come in and answer questions about those records. And because not even Mr. Meadows was asserting any privilege claim over these records, there's no possible justification for wholesale refusing to answer questions about them. If you're making excuses to avoid cooperating with our investigation, you're making excuses to hide the truth from the American people about what happened on January 6th. You're making excuses as part of a cover-up.
In other words, it is kind of open and shut. We've also heard new evidence today. Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren revealed that Meadows was receiving texts from an official in Georgia during Trump's infamous call with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, telling Meadows to, quote, end this call. I don't think this will be productive much longer. Congressman Adam Schiff revealed that an unidentified person texted Meadows with knowledge of Trump's plan to install an attorney general who would be receptive to amplifying his false claims of election fraud. And Congresswoman Elaine Luria revealed that Meadows was receiving encrypted messages from a member of Congress. This comes after the committee revealed other damning messages that Meadows received in real time as the insurrection was unfolding at the Capitol. Trump's own administration officials, as well as lawmakers on Capitol Hill and others, unambiguously demanded that Meadows tell Trump to take action to stop the siege. To quote just a few, POTUS needs to calm this expletive down. We are all helpless. Fix this now. Tell them to go home. And Congresswoman Liz Cheney read more texts into the record this morning from Republican members of Congress.
Here are a few others from Republican members. Quote, "It is really bad up here on the Hill." Another one, "The president needs to stop this ASAP." Another one, "Fix this now." But we know hours passed with no action by the president to defend the Congress of the United States from an assault while we were trying to count electoral votes.
She might as well have added, "Tell Trump it was me who got him." I mean, the text from those Republicans made it clear that they believed that Trump, and only Trump, was capable of calling off the mob, which means that they knew that he was responsible for what was happening. Trump even ignored the pleas from his own namesake son, who texted Meadows, and weirdly not his dad, to demand that his father show some leadership. "He has to lead now," Donald Trump Jr. said. "It has gone too far and gotten out of hand." But last but not least, Trump also ignored pleas for action from his right-wing allies at Fox News, including Laura Ingraham, Brian Kilmeade, and Sean Hannity, which we'll be discussing later in the show. I should also note that her mother, Jones, Meadows, mentioned none of those dramatic texts in his account of the siege in his new book, which was published last week. Now, despite the urgency of those messages, Trump wouldn't lift a finger. He allowed the siege to unfold for 187 minutes in dereliction of his duty under the Constitution. Meanwhile, two organizers of the rally at the Ellipse are poised to expose the members of Congress who participated in the insurrection. That is according to Rolling Stone, which reports that Dustin Stockton and Jennifer Lawrence will deliver testimony and turn over documents, including text messages that indicate the extensive involvement members of Congress and the Trump administration had in planning the House challenge to certify Biden's election. Joining me now.
I'll let you motherfuckers think y'all run everything. Motherfucker. You owe me some money,